pledge. Jonathan Swall's unable to be here. If everyone can stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we started a little bit early today because we had a lot of things on the agenda. So the public Q&A is going to start a little bit later, but we're going to give the floor to Fred Brewer to do the FY23 audit.
Okay, so I dropped off to everybody a kind of a summary sheet. So this sheet gives you a comparison of what the expenses have been over the last 15 years. So you can see regular instruction costs were about the same as they were in 22. They were up a little bit from 21. Special education costs, which you're not like any other, if you're like any other school, special ed costs have gone up considerably post-COVID. So that went from 278 to 378. Student and staff support was down a little bit. School admin was about the same. System admin, been picking up a little bit, so it was about 54, but you've had to add more staff to compensate for all the additional funds that you've been receiving for grants, and also superintendent's office to get caught up. Facilities maintenance, we've up 235 this year. It's been right around $200,000 the past few years. Transportation and buses, so it's mostly your bus contracts, 144,000. Other in the Burns fund, so of that $119,000, 117 is Burns money. Program expenses, so you can, if you look at it, you traditionally were between $40,000 and $60,000. In the last 3 years, you've been well up over 200,000. So that was your ESSER and your ARPA money. And then your on behalf payment is what the state put in for the teacher salaries over the school year. So it's kind of like their match to fund their pensions in the future. So that's based on your wages that you pay out. And then there's an actuarially calculated amount for a contribution rate. So that ends up being about $116,000 for South Bristol. So that's the expenses. So kind of go through the audit. Most of the time, what everybody's concerned about is fund balance. So for you, at the end of 23, the fund balance was $279,000, and you use about $165,000 to reduce taxes the next year. So there's about $114,000 that was left at the end of 23 that was available to go into future years. Looking at your accounts payable, it was about the same as the prior years, and your salary was similar to the prior years as well. So overall, you did pretty well. You ended up to the good. About $6,300, and then you transferred some money out into reserves. So you ended up with that $279,000 number. Any questions on what I handed out? I'm trying to be quick because I know you want to get to a lot. So.
No, you don't have the audits, do you?
Peter has those, so.
Okay.
There are full copies in the central office. And Fred's office is going to email us a digital copy to send out to the board.
Okay.
And we haven't received that yet. Double check for it. We haven't received
Okay.
the digital copy yet.
All right,
I'll send you the digital copy. We'll share it, put it on the websites, and distribute that. And then some bound copies in the central office. And I'll get you as many copies of those copies as you wish, Sarah. But in the past, when we brought all bound copies to a meeting like this, they often get left behind. So
We can't follow through. We can't follow anything right now. So it's, I mean, I'm not questioning what you're telling us, but it's hard not to be able to look at the numbers. I've never had that before. So.
Yeah, and if you've got questions, just phone Peter.
Yeah.
any questions, we're happy to come back if we need to.
We should be able to follow them. Thank you. Okay.
All right, thank you.
If I give you half an hour. Now what do we do? Thank you, Fred.
You could go through and do some.
Yeah. Okay, since I thought that was gonna take a half hour and I thought we were gonna have information in front of us, there is a little bit of bookkeeping that we have to do, so I'm just gonna do that now so we can get that out of the way so that when Jeff comes in about 20 minutes, he can start his presentation. Okay, so our Education Service Center Q&A will be public, like it wasn't like last month, so you'll be able to ask questions and we'll answer them. But we also have a call for public comment now. Is there any public comment on anything? We'll have another one at the end. Okay. We'll do the secretary's report. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on September 2nd. Is there a second?
Second.
Christian, is there any discussion? All those in favor? So moved. Ready for the witness from them? Okay, we'll do that. All right, we're going to go on to the chair's report then. The next regular meeting of the South Bristol School Board will be November 4th at 5:30 at South Bristol School. And the next meeting of the AOS Board is scheduled for November 5th, 2025 at Central Office.
There's a
That
change.
changed, that got changed.
All right, no, it's not. It's to the 11th, was it? 12th.
We just changed that.
We just changed it.
Okay, so the AOS meeting is moved a little bit later because they want to do it after the South Bristol and Bristol November meetings, just in case anything comes up with the Education Service Center. They want to make sure that that happens and then they can go on talking about their budget. So that's November 12th at Central Office. Kristen, do you want to give a short AOS 93 report?
Sure. What can I talk about? Well, it was all in public. So we approved the contract for the superintendent's contract for the next 2 years. And we talked about a 2-town AOS budget and a 4-town AOS budget, but we decided not to get too into the weeds until people thought that there would be more of we weren't going to waste our time trying to figure that out if we thought that there was a solution or a known answer coming soon, which we think there is. So we talked a little bit about the lease that's coming up for the central office building. That's about it.
Okay. Thank you. Let's skip ahead to the principal's report.
Busy month. We had our bus evacuation drill on August 29th, and middle schoolers were great, helping out our little ones get off the bus. Band and chorus off to a great start. We have 26 chorus students and 20 band students, which is definitely up from last year.
Yeah.
Wednesday after school art began on September 10th and is quite well attended. We're all having fun trying a variety of different art projects. We had our first fire drill on September 11th. We were very swift in leaving the building. However, there are a couple things to work on, which I addressed. Boat shop began on September 12th, and the 8th graders are really excited about this opportunity. On September 16th, we were quite pleased with the attendance at our open house because last year it happened to be on a rescheduled soccer game, so that took out a lot of people, but everyone enjoyed the hot dog barbecue and the ice cream. LCTV started working with our 5th graders on September 17th, and they are slowly learning the ropes, and the 6th graders really want to jump in and help them, but they're not allowed yet. On the 18th, the whole school kicked off Marine Week with a school trip to the Booth Bay Aquarium and Sea and Science Center. And on the 23rd, the whole school traveled to Maine Maritime Museum for a tour of the museum and a boat trip on the Kennebec River. And then at the end of the week, we had a 40-foot-long whale set up in the gym, and each class got to go into the whale and find out about the anatomy and different sea creatures that the whale might eat or might not. And Ms. Wright and I took the 6th graders to LCTV to a taping of 207 with Don Kerrigan, and they enjoyed what a control room looks like in a large studio like that. There are some cute pictures of them sitting in the seats that the News Center hosts are in. And they spent a long time with Don Kerrigan, Rob Caldwell, and Samantha York asking questions about how they can get into how they can get into into journalism and communications. And it was pretty cool to hear their questions at their age. Our soccer team went to Portland on Sunday the 21st to watch the Hearts of Pine soccer game, and they are part of a documentary that the Hearts of Pine are doing. They came here to record our kids, and they're putting a documentary together about our soccer team and being a school on the coast and what that's like. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. The Boosters Club kicked off the year with an event at Coastside for parents, which was well attended and helped for the following. October 2nd, they had their first meeting and started making plans really for the year, but we're starting with fall cleanup and the Veterans Tea. And today, the Math for Me coaches were here in classrooms, either watching a lesson that our teachers were providing or doing a lesson themselves so our teachers could get some ideas of different strategies to have an extremely inclusive math class. And on Friday the 10th, our whole staff will be attending a PlayWorks training sponsored by Maine Health, focused on how to help kids play in a way outside where they can help to solve their disagreements so they don't come into the classroom and we don't lose class time.
That's good.
Yeah, it'll be great.
All right, facilities?
Again, busy month. Air and water quality came to clean out radon mitigation tank after a bit of PV piping debris got in there. I think that was supposed to happen, but we're all good now. Jim Reddy was here to fix the sediment filter on the hot water heater in the custodial office. On the 7th, the selectmen and Hanleys were here to roll the field. It was a little rough beginning of the soccer season, and now it's nice and black. On the 11th, Shane called Colby and Gale for fixing the Renai, and we're waiting on a quote for that. And then after researching the cost for repairing the fence near the new well, the selectmen decided to repair the fence on the back side of the field themselves. It's all put back together and looks great, very safe. Shane has been taking water samples for lead and copper. However, we received, on the 29th, we received clearance to do just the chlorine test twice a week, which is exciting, instead of every day. And then on the 29th, Shane made a service call to Colby and Gale to get the heaters looked at in Salties because they need to be serviced, and their quote will help us to determine whether to get a replacement or heat pumps. And Tom Fence came to us well earlier than expected to complete the fence behind Salties. So now there's a play area that is safe for pre-KK and aftercare. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tom?
On September 15th, I attended the annual legislative update the governor Woodson puts on for school personnel regarding statute changes that might be impacting us. I've got a book I didn't bring, I believe, if anyone wants to read them. There's about 30. Most of them are just monitoring right now. Also policies, we do have 2 new policies that we're going to have to look at. You want one even quicker than the
I
other.
want it yesterday.
But we are going to have to put a policy in around cell phones in schools, and we are going to have to put a policy in around building temperature. So those are two that we will have to look at. So at some point we'll have to pull together a group to, whoever does the policies down here.
Yeah, we definitely have cell phone guidelines and STP handbook that are pretty well thought out, so we'll get a policy
You can just
together
take the
from
ball,
that.
you can take your procedures and craft a policy from that.
Yeah.
That's fine. Anybody's important. And if it gets too warm, it's simply warm. But the language is pretty, I'll share with you language, pretty close. But we just have to have a policy in place. September 18th, I had the first Mid-Coast Superintendent's Association meeting of the year. It gives the all the superintendents in the Mid-Coast area the opportunity to get together and talk about whatever the pressing issues are that we're currently dealing with. We meet once a month with that group. The A team is currently working on a district-wide workshop for our teachers on November 10th. We're pulling together some pretty good, similar to the approach we used last year. We're pulling together individuals to come in, some within the system, some outside the system, to come in and provide professional development for our staff. And we're trying to make it, we had pretty good success with the workshop type model where you could have sessions that they could select from, because not everything applies obviously to every educator. So we've got at least 6 sessions right now. I think we're going to be up to 7 or 8 sessions. 2 sessions. We'll have a keynote speaker in the morning, and then we'll have two afternoon sessions after that. Obviously, I attended the September 23rd ESC Restructuring Committee meeting. It was held here. This is what you want to remind people of. On October 22nd, I'll be attending the Maine School Superintendents Association business meeting, which takes place up in Augusta at the Civic Center. And then the 2 days following that, October 23rd and 24th, the Maine School Management Association has their fall conference, and that is open to school board members. So if there are any members who of the board that wanted to participate in those 2 days of workshop up in Augusta, just let me know and we'll get you registered.
Thank you. Grant review and approval. I'll make a motion to accept the $10,000 grant from the Community Health Improvement Fund. Have a second? Or do you want to tell us?
Yeah, it's done by Maine Health, and it is for keeping our kids active and engaged after school, in school, on the weekends, whenever we can. And last year, it was fantastic. Our kids did the fat tire biking, and they went on a camping and hiking trip, which they enjoyed. They also went skiing, and that was a big hit. The kids want to do that many more times. And having the use of the vans is really helpful for that. So it all comes together to be very beneficial to the kids.
All right, all those in favor? So moved. Communications, recommendations, none. Old business, none. New business, none. Policy?
I just refer to those policies that we're going to have to update and create in my reports.
So we should be able to have a first read of those next.
Well, they're not, the cell phone one isn't due until August 1st. You don't have to have that.
Oh, I thought we were
August
waiting on
1st.
it. When you said August 1st last time, I thought we were waiting.
No, no.
So it's, okay,
Upcoming
so,
August 1st.
perfect.
The temperature ones needs to be answered. Obviously, when we're approaching it.
Yep.
And then some.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Peter, do you want us to start?
So on the finance report, we have the FY '26 year to date through today, which is really through last Friday, because that's the last time we ran it. And but it does include one October payroll and one. So it's not clean end of September, but I wanted to run through, capture as much data as I could. And what I've gone through, we checked all the, spent a good bit of time with the whole team today going through all the different parts of this and identifying, checking encumbrances was a big piece of what we did. We made sure that the contract for the teachers was done after we set the budget, and there were things from previous years that were that we had noticed that we wanted to double check and see how the rollover worked. And honestly, surprising to me, most of it was accurate. We checked it a number of ways, but for example, the when we look at the teacher salary, you see that we budgeted 454, 815. We've paid out so far since the contract. The teachers don't get paid starting July 1st, they get paid when school starts. So we've had like 3 payrolls with teachers in it, I guess. And the encumbrance is there. I checked both all the encumbered employees and also checked the last payroll and multiplied it, to see what that would equal. And it's all coming up, these seem to be accurate numbers everywhere. I spot checked them by triangulating the check, So I did see a couple things that we need to adjust. That ed tech salary and regular ed, we just need to adjust the percentage that ed tech is paid out of Title I, which is something that we do 2 or 3 times during the year to dial it up to a nice close at the end with how much title funds we receive. And then another thing that we identified when we were checking all this is that we're finding that AptiFunds is offering us account lines, too many account lines, and then we have, if you look at the SPED section, you see that we're paying SPED teachers out of 2 or 3 different SPED teacher accounts. And we identified how that happens, and we ought to be able to make this this whole report page shorter next time by removing some of those account lines and consolidating them. So that's a cleanup that comes from learning how to use the system, but the data in the system, the numbers are, I have confidence in those. And so our process, going through here is to see if there's anything they need to be concerned about or anything that we need to be concerned about at the business office. And I would say that from a financial point of view, South Bristol and the school committee doesn't need to be concerned about anything. From my point of view, I have a process ahead of me of trying to figure out why AptiFund offers us account lines that we actually shouldn't be offered when we're doing certain processes and eliminate those. And also working with, I've asked both Laurie and Jen Rivera as 2 principals, one the most experienced in the AOS and one the least experienced principal.
Thank you.
And that's really important because what I want to do is give both the most experienced eyes on what I name accounts and the most sort of brand new, fresh eyes to say, does this make sense to me if I've only been here a while? So by having both of those individuals go through the whole thing, we're going to rename everything. And my team's going to be present when we do that. We're going to try to come up with names for these account lines that aren't just the way people have thrown names at them over the years. So we're now in the process of doing that. We've begun in the central office. We'd like Laurie and Jen to look at with us. And for example, SPED admin is what the AOS assessment is in the special ed cost center. And then CO, admin is what it is, and superintendent. And it's hard to understand what these things really mean. So Laurie and I had a conversation about that and making it more user-friendly. We agreed to meet with Jen, and then my team had brought them up to speed on identifying account lines with names that they would understand. So the whole thing is actually come together pretty well now. We're now at a point of optimizing it for not only accuracy, but user-friendliness. And John is kind of drifting from actual finance to AptiFund, accounting system work. John and my team have drafted a letter to AptiFund about all the things that we're concerned about right now. And John and I are going to talk again at this meeting about whether it comes down central office Wednesday or Thursday of this week to finish that letter and get it out and share with them all the concerns we have at this stage. So there's been a thorough review of this first month of school, seeing how the fiscal year rolled over and seeing how it's reporting out to make sure it's accurate, but also that it works for everybody. And the accuracy looks good, and I think that we're on the side of the year with good budgets to actuals. Any questions about all that? Or any other things that might be within the budget finances? Thanks.
Oh, thank you. All right, with that, I will turn the floor over to Jeffrey Burrows from Lincoln Academy. So we're always excited to have Lincoln Academy come and talk to us because that's where we send most of our students, and our students do very well there. He came a couple of years ago, and I'm still to have him come back and kind of give an overview and talk about some of the exciting things that are going on up there. Almost there.
It's great, thank you. I know that you're not here to hear me, you're here for some more important conversations later, but as I do often, I'm gonna throw some things out there, some things I think are helpful, but any questions are appropriate. And I would be happy to be invited back to talk about other issues that might be important to you as citizens and as board members, okay? Okay. Technology, right? It's just. It's good there, but it's not good there.
Yeah. Well, let's see if the shrimp one's got it in there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's just go to the first slide. Okay, so the couple things I was just going to talk about, sometimes just refreshing people's understanding of what is Lincoln Academy and how are we different than the public sending units that we work with. Talk a little bit about accreditation and how that works. I will show you I'll show you our budget, and so you can see the expense and the cost side, expense and the revenue side of that, and then a little bit about our structure, and then I'm going to show some data that I collected on South Bristol students, okay? So, and also some graduation rate data, which was asked of me. So we can go to the next slide. So many of you probably realize this, that Lincoln Academy is an independent school, okay? But we're a particular kind of independent school because we serve a public purpose. And so we're not fully private. Some of the fully private schools in Maine, Hebron, Kents Hill, Gould, and we're obviously not public. So it's a little bit of a different thing in there. A couple of things to know. So Lincoln Academy is a private school approved for tuition purposes. We also are called a 60/40 school. So if you get excited about reading education statutes, then those two terms apply a lot to us, okay? And we're 60/40, meaning that we have more than 60% of our students are funded from towns like yours, okay? So that's the rationale there. One more. Let me just go back there for a second. Yeah, that's it. So we're currently about 89% of our students are publicly funded, okay? And that's from 14 different towns, not just up and down the peninsula. We have kids from all over the state because there's a number of areas, geographic areas, rural areas that don't have public schools, right? So for high school. And so we get kids from Aldo, we can get kids, Georgetown has choice, some other places like that. So a couple interesting things, obviously, Lincoln Academy was founded before Maine was a state, right? So we were actually founded in Massachusetts. That's where our charter lies. And a fun fact, we've always been co-educational. So the story goes, Kaya Bailey's wife said, well, why not educate the fairer sex? So that happened right from the beginning. So it wasn't co-equal education. Don't take that. Yeah. So a little bit about the structure, it's pretty similar, except for the head of school, that is the role that I have, kind of plays a role that has a combination of a superintendent and a principal, not meaning to cast aspersions on any roles. But the board of trustees is not different than any nonprofit board. They're a private board. They are elected or appointed through a process within the board rules and governance structure. I am the only employee of the board of trustees. Okay, and then everybody who works at the schools, then I employ them. Okay. Similarly, the superintendent has multiple principals across different schools. They have all sorts of different ways that they employ people, and I won't get into that. But the bigger difference is our school board meetings are not public, right? So when our trustees meet, it's not a public meeting. Okay. We do have lots of people on the board. Jen is on our board. Sarah just stepped off our board. So we have a number of different, and we have people from, I think, almost every town that we serve in the major 7 between the AOS and the new GSB RSU 48. Okay, good. We are accredited by 2 different groups, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and we're accredited by Maine Department of Education, okay? And then we're also a 501c3 nonprofit, okay? So, and the big difference there is that in being accredited by New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which some public schools are as well, it allows us to have some say in our teacher certification, although all of the teachers at Lincoln are certified, and particularly special education teachers. They don't have to be. We can put them in a process. We can hire them and have them teach and start teaching before they get a credential. And then we have a little bit, some flexibility in how we deliver our curriculum, although we are aligned to the main learning results, and we do participate in the state testing program, which is happening next week, I think. So this is a pie chart. It's pretty small. It looked a lot better on a pie chart. Let me get up a little closer. So in terms of revenue side of things, I think the biggest point here is the day tuition. Okay, so tuition dollars coming in from your town is about 70% of our revenue, and the cost to employ the employees in our schools, including everybody, facilities, staff, every kitchen, everybody else, and their benefits is 67%. So the current per pupil rate is $480, I think, something give or take. And that's what we get from the state to run the program, okay? It's important to recognize that special education, right, because FAPE lies with the public unit, is a pass-through expense, okay? So the bucket for special education is the same on both slides. So, and we actually bill in arrears. So we bill last year's budget or costs divided by this year's students, okay? So it's a formula that's dictated to us by Maine statute. We don't have any control over it, but we do work. We're really proud of the work that we do with our special education students. The other thing that's different, particularly in a public versus a private school or independent schools, is we do have the ability to fundraise. So about 4% of our revenue comes in. We try to raise about $325,000 a year in annual giving. We also have an endowment that we can draw on that ends up generating some money, mostly for scholarships, actually, for kids that are leaving the school. But we do have a couple endowed funds that help us with operating expenses, okay? So that's $150,000, $160,000 in terms of the draw. Questions on big picture budget? It was about $11 million budget, $11.5, $12 million budget, all in, about 100 employees. And currently we're sitting just over 600 kids, about 604 students, and that includes 43 students in our boarding program. A couple of them are domestic, and the rest of them are international from 18 different countries. Any questions on the money slide? Okay. So one of the things that, just so you probably know this, because you just sent most of these young people to me. The gender district, there's 31 currently. We have 31 students from South Bristol in our midst. Doesn't mean they all went to the school. I would imagine they probably could have gone to other schools, but reside here. Yeah, it didn't really come out well. This, I can't even see it. About 5% of your students currently involved in vocational education at Fast Tech. We have about 13% of the kids have some sort of support from special ed. About 10% are doing music or theater. 48% looks like are doing small athletics. So that's pretty interesting. About 20% take AP courses. That you guys actually have the highest percentage currently of total enrollment of taking AP classes. Okay. So these are some of the things that we track in terms of the students. One of the things that Sarah and I had talked about was how do we track cohort completion rate, which is not a data point that the state tracks. And so we've just split off from PowerSchool. We have our own PowerSchool data system now, our own instance of it, and so we've been working to populate the fields. So it's going to take us a couple of years to be able to collect data on that, but in a couple of years I'll be able to come here and say, of the young people that started in the graduating class of 2032, right? These are the number of kids that actually finished, right? Because young people can come to us. If it doesn't work for them, they can go somewhere else. But they can also then come back to us. And so that's an important statistic, I think, particularly for US taxpayers, to say, okay, graduation rates are one thing, which I'll show you in a minute, but then how do you track the success of the student through your program, all right? The state of Maine tracks graduation rates at 4, 5, and 6 years, actually. And so that's something, I think the next slide has a graduation rate. So So this is our graduation rate over time from 2019 to the current. So in the 90s, well, it was about 90, I think about 96%, just under 95 now. This is the state graduation rate, okay? Graduation rate at the state, I think, and if there's anybody who knows this better than me, correct me, it is based on the enrollment in the senior class at the date and time. I think it's October 15th, and that percentage that finished. So it's even a weirder, it's a kind of an awkward number too, okay? But that's the rate that they published. They also published the 4 and 5 year, 5 and 6 year graduation rates, and that would include students who are in special education, who obviously we can continue to take them through in life skills and things like that. And that also would include kids who may have needed an extra year that would have had to petition the town if you guys would have had to approve it for that. Okay. So we went about cell phone. Any questions on data? Yes. No, sorry. Go back to that.
Do you have information specifically for South Bristol students?
I don't have it with me today in the graduation rate because it's not calculated at the state in a per town basis. So in terms of that group, yeah, it's a data point that I want to bring forward, bringing back. The other thing is it's hard with a small total population. A lot of breaking down identifies kids, and so I'd like to do it when I have a couple years of data, so that I can say the trend over the last 3 years has been this. So, but it's a good, excellent question. Okay. Other questions? Any other questions on those couple of slides?
The reason why I've been pestering you about graduation rates is because it doesn't just speak to the job that you're doing at Lincoln, it speaks to the job that we're doing here, and if there's anything that we can improve, and our teachers work really hard to get our kids in the best position they can to go to Lincoln, but it's a joint effort to get these kids across the finish line, senior year. So it's not just about the job you're doing. We have some responsibility for that.
Oh, sure,
and parents do too.
Agreed. Any information that we can do, it won't surprise many of you to say that some of the young people that you had here who struggled with attendance are struggling with attendance with us, right? That doesn't change in high school. Obviously, getting to high school is also a difficult thing, right? The bus is one thing, but then if you live out further away, you have to drive to the bus, or you don't have a supportive situation at home that might be helping you get there, then kid misses a bunch of school. So that's absolutely true. And it is something we're interested in working with everybody on, right? The more information that we know up front to try to help understand what we can do to support coming in, it's a lot easier to support a student as they enter, as opposed to try to figure out how to get them to school when we missed a bunch of things up front. So we'd definitely be interested in doing some of that work with you. Cell phone policies, that was another question. So we do have a cell phone policy, it's not as restrictive probably as some of the other ones. This is it. It's basically bell to bell within the classrooms, the phones are away. Okay, so they're either in a bag that's separate, or there's different, teachers have freedom to either have a caddy or a box on their desk, but they're away, okay? And that includes leaving to go to the bathroom, which seems to be the most popular time to try to take your cell phone. Really, it doesn't really make any sense to me, but that's what happens. We're allowing them to use them very much, okay? With the idea, this goes along with our artificial intelligence literacy policy that we're working on, is that these young people are moving into the world where they're going to have to learn how to deal with this technology. And so we certainly believe that the classroom experience needs to be distraction-free, but we also believe that these young people have to learn how to use this. And they're using it as soon as they walk off the gate anyway. And so we're trying to balance that. It's a 3-strike policy. The first time you get written up, the second time it goes to the office, the third time your parents come in and take it, you can't have it back in school, okay, for the trimester. So it's been really good so far. I think the kids appreciate the confidence that they can manage this, and that whether I care to spend a lot of whatever it is, 56 hours a week that they spend on these things or not, it is part of their life, and they have to learn how to manage those pieces too. So so that I think a number of the other Senate schools are working on cell phone policies as well, if they haven't implemented them already. Yeah. That's what I brought tonight. Questions, thoughts, things that we would like to hear more about, So this is big, yeah, okay. Questions or anything that I can do for you in the future? Bring other, or questions you have today, about anything that's going on up there now?
I'd love to hear
Yes.
that.
When these students reach like 7th and 8th grade, their last year here before they migrate to Lincoln Academy, how much communication is there from Lincoln back to the middle schools?
Right.
Not just ours, but any of them, about, here's what our students should be prepared for freshman year.
Yeah, so, and that's a great question. So one of the things that Todd or Sarah put on the agenda was, this idea of vertical teaming. How can we work together from the high school with the middle schools? Vertical teaming works really well in specific things like music. So all the music teachers are actually going to Lincoln on Friday to do some work. Math is one that tends to work pretty well together too. And so it's hard to do it with 6 or 7 different school districts. But it is important to do. We currently don't have an entrance assessment, right, so that we can have a standardized test across that board. We do have NWEA data that comes from the schools that helps us. And one of the things that I thought might be interesting if you want to do the work is, or if you want to put it together is, in a previous school that I was at, the sending school, middle school, put together a survey that we delivered to that group's freshmen in the first month or 2 of school. You ask the questions. What do was your performance, was your language arts appropriate for the work you're doing? Do you have too little homework? What are the things that you might think, your teachers here might think would be important to know about how the kids are doing in high school? We'd be happy to do that. And if that can be town specific, that's not hard to get done. So I think that's important to do. So that totally answered your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think one of the things that they do well here too is keeping data walls for NWEA scores from, when they're in 1st and 2nd grade all the way up. So it might be interesting to compare those 10th grade scores that they're about to take with the previous scores of some of our kids.
Yeah, I won't talk about FERPA because I don't really know.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it is possible.
I think we definitely have NWEA scores. They're going to be tested. I think we can figure out a way to disaggregate or aggregate them.
General information, it is hard because we don't have very many kids, so.
Yeah. I think the one thing I would say as I get off the floor so you can have the rest of your meeting, there's something really amazing about small community schools like yours, right? If you think about a school of 600 kids, which is probably, I don't know what the total enrollment is here. 60, so it's 10 times bigger, right? The nature of your sons and your daughters and the people that come from all these communities is they understand difference, they appreciate each other, no matter what walk of life they come from, and they transport that and take it with them to Lincoln Academy, and it just happens. I mean, we are not immune to some of the problems you have in high school, right? Kids can be mean, they can pick on each other and all that kind of stuff. But by and large, they're respectful of each other, and they don't get into these cliques. Some of the things that kids can do, and don't get picked on is amazing to me. When I was in high school, it was awful. One war made the biggest difference on the planet. And it's amazing. Young people will come in from working in the barn or hauling traps and they'll walk in and nobody cares. They're happy. They're just, that's Fred, or that's just Jane. We just know her. We grew up with her. I think that's a real unique part of rural Maine and also these small schools that all come together in a big place. So you're doing a good job for sure. Okay. Yes? Done?
Yeah,
Enough
thank you for
today?
coming. Don't be a stranger.
Okay, I won't. Invite me back. You want me to talk about anything very specific? I'm happy to come back. Thanks.
Let's see 3 more times.
I gotta see you 3 more times. I know.
Take a roll call.
All right, so, yeah. Yep. So Bristol had a successful meeting on Tuesday. I just kind of wanted to do a show of hands because we have a presentation that we're ready to go with. It has been presented a couple of times and it's the same presentation that's been on the school website, and there's a link to the town website. So If people want us to go through the whole thing again, we're welcome to, but I just wanted to get kind of some sense of how comfortable you feel with this information, if we just want to open it up to a question and answer session, or if you want more of a presentation. Anyone have any thoughts? Anyone care to speak?
Yes, for show of hands.
Show of hands. All right, who would like to see the presentation again? Or who would like to see the presentation? Okay, perfect. Jake, no. All right. No, not even, no, that's what because I see some faces that I haven't seen before, and so that works. Do we have some-
Oh, that guy, that guy, you don't want to know that guy. He did.
All right, so we have some members of our board that have been on the reorganization committee, and then you'll see some faces in the audience from the Bristol side of things, some of our community members that are also on the committee. You'll see a list of names in a little bit, but we have a great representation from the restructuring committee as a whole, as well as our board. So we're gonna kind of take turns. If we go too fast over something, just raise your hand and we can talk about it in a little bit more detail.
Huh?
Yeah, you'll see a list of, this is the members of the both school boards, as well as you'll see the people that have been kind of in the thick of the restructuring committee. Go ahead to the next slide. Do you want me to just go on further?
So it's up to you.
Okay. I'm wondering if we should have the restructuring committee introduce themselves. Can we go back one slide, please?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and have the restructuring committee introduce themselves. Want to start with Christina over there?
Christina Bradbury, Bristol staff and resident.
We're gonna have to really project when we talk too,
Stand up,
and maybe stand up when we introduce yourself as well.
Angela Faring, South Bristol resident and school volunteer.
Jennifer Rivera, school principal at Bristol.
David Lugosh, on the Bristol School Board.
Eric Carlucci, Bristol Board Chair.
Sarah Kennedy, Bristol parent.
Okay, I almost missed Sarah because is there anybody else
We
out in the
haven't
audience?
missed anybody else,
Okay, go ahead, John.
I'm John Armentrout, South Bristol employee, ed tech, and South Bristol resident.
IT extraordinaire, he forgot to say. Lori Stiles, principal at South Bristol, and South Bristol resident.
Sarah Mitchell, South Bristol School Chair.
Christian Coates, South Bristol School Board member and AOS board member.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as you know, the body of water that goes between our two peninsulas is Johns Bay, so that's why we chose the name the Johns Bay Coastal Alliance Educational Service Center. Our goal is to provide essential administration and programmatic support to the public schools of Bristol and South Bristol. The Johns Bay Coastal Alliance is governed by the elected school boards of both towns and is dedicated to upholding state educational standards. We're committed to fostering excellence in education through our collaborative services, which are guided by the values of our students, educators, and community.
Sure. For the student impact, we tried to think of all of the things that Bristol and South Bristol are doing together and how this change, how making our circle a little bit smaller would really have an impact on students. One of the things that stood out to us is our programming is quite similar. We use similar programs, even though we're all doing the same type of curriculum. The different schools have chosen different programs. South Bristol and Bristol have chosen the same programs. So our teachers are able to work together often when it comes to professional development without missing a beat. Also, having the ESC staff housed in one of the two buildings, only having two buildings and not four, we feel like the staff will be more visible to our staff and to our students, but also the students and why we're doing exactly what we do every day are more visible to that ESC staff, which we believe is also very important. Jen, anything that I've missed on that?
No, and I think in addition to the programming being similar, just listening to things like your principal's report, I think we creatively, our staff will learn more from each other if you have a partnership with two schools and have that ability to collaborate more. I mean, I just wanted to steal a couple ideas tonight from my staff. So those things are really important to keep us all fresh.
You want to do this one?
Sure, yeah. So going back to 2023, the AOS had been exploring different reorganization ideas. We talked about creating an ESC between the 7 towns and 5 schools that existed in the AOS at that time. It was voted down, and then although our 2 schools voted in favor of it, then GSB decided to leave the AOS and start their own RSU between Damerscott and Newcastle and Bremen. And since then, we've sort of seen the writing on the wall and have been pursuing more actively some different ideas about what we could do. There was previously a voting block in the AOS between our 2 towns and the towns in town, where we carried more weight because the weighted voting in the AOS, there is weighted voting in the AOS. So our 5 towns and 3 schools carried a little bit more weight and tended to vote as a block and tended to vote on the same philosophical ideas and in the same direction. And with the new cost-sharing formula that was put in place after GSB left, our towns no longer have any kind of majority. So basically, South Bristol doesn't have much of a say anyway because of how small we are. But even South Bristol combined with Bristol now does not have a majority vote that would outweigh the towns on the north side of Route 1. So especially in South Bristol, our proportion of assessment that we are paying to support the AOS is increasing, and our voice is basically silent. So, we go back to 1776 and no taxation without representation, right? We can't let that stand. So I think we've proved over the last several years, and really, if you look back over the last century of Bristol and South Bristol Peninsula history, right? We were one town. Half of the people around here are related to each other. We're not that far away. This is not like Palestine. We can all get along. We kind of see things the same way. And we can move forward as a team better than we can in the situation that we're in now in the AOS, when the staff for the AOS has to divide their time between the 4 schools, which are geographically very disparate and far apart from each other. And they have to give their resources to the students who are in the most need. And frankly, that's not our students. So we're paying more, we have less voice, and we're getting, not because anybody's doing a bad job, but we're getting less service than we could otherwise. So.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that. I mean, I think that what we've noticed in the last couple of years is that the job that central office needs to accomplish, whether it's the special ed department at central office, whether it's the business office, the job is so much bigger than the staff that they have. So it's not that they're doing a bad job, it's they just don't have enough time to give all the different schools exactly what we need and what we're paying for. So the AOS system has also been a broken system. I mean, it was something that was kind of forced on a lot of us back when Baldacci was in the administration. And since then, many AOSs have disbanded. So this isn't a new problem that we're seeing. It's something that AOSs across the state have come to realize that it was just not necessarily the best way to do business to start with. And so we're kind of following a trend of people figuring out other systems. I think that's fair to say.
More than half of the AOSs that were created in 2015 have now broken apart.
And the other thing that I want to mention too, because Lori and I have talked about this, is that separating from Jefferson and Noblesboro, doesn't necessarily need to separate everything. So if our staff wants to have professional development, if our second grade teacher has an idea and the Jefferson second grade teacher is really interested in that, it doesn't stop collaboration. It does separate us a little bit, but we're still, part of this mid-coast region, and we can still share resources and share great ideas. Okay.
I can do this one.
Oh.
Initially, the restructuring committee was sort of tasked with figuring out what kind of options there might be for South Bristol and Bristol. And we looked at a number of different things, private schools, a two-town regional service, RSU regional school unit. And that option looked really attractive previous to GSB pulling out of the AOS, although there were some significant drawbacks to it in terms of politics around the two towns and the ownership of the property and all that sort of thing. After that, when GSB was attempting to pull out, as these guys have already said, we kind of put the restructuring committee on hold for a few months just to figure out what GSB was going to do and those four towns were going to do. And then after they officially left AOS and we got a feel for how the cost sharing structure was going to change and the voting structure was going to change, the governance structure of the AOS, we had an idea to perhaps pursue an ESC of our own with just the two towns instead of the four towns. So that is what we put all our effort in since sometime in August, I think, or July, I forgot. And so that's where we are at this point.
All right, so Forming an Education Service Center.
Go ahead.
Forming an Education Service Center with these two towns, it allows us to share all the resources and services that are currently provided by the AOS. So we can share a special ed director, we can share a transportation administrator, we can share whatever services that the AOS is already giving us. So we need nutrition, we need superintendent services. We've chosen to have a curriculum coordinator. So most of the service, all the services that are in the AOS would just be provided by the ESC. And the nice thing that steered us away from an RSU where it's one, where we lose a lot of local control is the fact that each town school committee would be on the Education Service Center board. And we'd have equal membership and equal voting power. One of the things that might be a little bit frustrating tonight is that we have a draft cost sharing agreement. And we realized through listening to some of the questions from the Bristol voters on Tuesday that we need to just take a look at that. We need to it's still in draft form. We need to get back together as a reorganization committee and really kind of figure out exactly what the best way to do that is. So what? Yeah, and all these decisions, the reorganization committee comes up with ideas and they present them to the Bristol School Board and the South Bristol School Board, and those will be the two bodies that end up voting on this. So they're not making any decisions, but they're going to kind of give us maybe two of the best options, and then we'll figure it out from there. Right.
So as Sarah mentioned, there's you have a question, yeah. So as Sarah mentioned, the services that we're proposing right now in the ESC would be superintendent, curriculum coordinator, finance and business administration, special ed administration, facilities, transportation, nutrition, and secondary ed administration. Many of those are like bookkeeping kinds of things for the most part, except for a few at the very top, which would have potentially some impact on the pedagogical natures of the schools. But for the most part, we're basically taking what the AOS provided us and bringing that under a different roof with people that are more responsive to these two towns.
Can you go back one slide?
Sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I think it just bears pointing out and saying really loud again, that this alliance, this ESC, maintains our two schools exactly the way they are. It maintains our two school boards exactly the way they are. We will have an administrative unit, much like we do now in the form of the AOS. We will have an administrative unit that lives somewhere in this vicinity that will be governed by all five of us and all five of the Bristol School Board. And that may seem like overkill, but we figured we'd keep it big for starters, and in the future we can pare it down if we need to. But that means that every time that board, that ESC board meets, it will be a public meeting because there will be a quorum of school board members getting together, right? So there's not a lot of change happening here other than where the administrators are and how much we're paying for them, which is less.
Question? Do you have any concerns do you sense the state has any concerns as we get smaller and smaller, as, in this case, in ESC? That there be any pressure on us because, hey, boy, you're so little, you should maintain two separate buildings, schools, staffs, all of that?
That's totally up to the towns.
Okay, good.
And the Department of Education has been really encouraging in this direction, in this decision.
Can I ask a quick question? Questions appropriate?
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit more? You said the voting previously was weighted.
Yeah.
Can you speak to what are the criteria for that previous weighted situation and how
So
it's different
it's
now?
not previous, it's still the way it is today.
Okay.
And it's according to statute. The way the AOS was set up was that out of the towns that made up any AOS, there would be a one board member from each of those towns, not necessarily from each of those schools, right? Because GSB was reflective of 3 towns and they had 3 board members on the AOS board.
Okay.
We had 1, Bristol had 1, Jefferson and Noblesboro had 1. So 7 members on the board. Each member represented their population in terms of the entire school. So you add all the population of all those 7 towns up, and I think we had, 5.9% or something like that, out of that entire number. So our vote at that point was really small, but we were, like I was saying, we had Bristol's population representative, we had the 3 towns up close to GSB.
Okay.
Does that
So
make sense?
at the second bullet point there, you can see what our voting percentages are now.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes sense.
And we really did get a good deal from this
Yes.
beginning in terms of cost for our money, because we didn't have to pay that much. It's not a surprise that we are being asked to contribute more. I think there's a line where that needs to stop, but.
Yeah, that's worth
but, you know,
saying for new folks too, right? That under that weighted agreement, it was the cost share was also divvied up the same way, which was also very good for us.
Yeah. Bob,
Yeah, I wonder if Jefferson and Noblesboro are gonna do that.
Well, that's up to them.
the way they're talking
The
about.
AOS will still exist. The AOS doesn't go away if we withdraw from the AOS. So if this goes forward, then Jefferson and Noblesboro will still be AOS 93, and they could continue to be AOS 93. They could create their own ESC.
Marty, I just want to ask about staffing for the ESC. I would assume that some of those positions you mentioned would be combined in an individual. But how many positions are you thinking this might be?
That'll be in a couple of slides, so if you just want to wait just a second, and if you have more questions after that slide, then we can address those questions after that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
What is your projected budget over the next 10 years?
That's coming, that'll be coming too.
Sure, so the governing body, as Christian pointed out, will be, consist of the all 5 members from each board, school board, or 10 members, each having an equal vote. Let's see, the superintendent, executive director, they'll be at the meetings as well, although non-voting members. The presence of 3 directors will constitute a quorum for that town. Although we're discussing that as well in terms of a particular meeting that might change the ILA, but that's in draft form right now. So the cost sharing right now, we've decided, we've proposed that the first 50% of the total budget be split equally, and the remaining 50% of the budget would be weighted, prorated by the student population. So Bristol's population would weight their second 50%, second half, or part, what I call part B in the next slide. I guess I can go there now. Actually, we'll get to an actual slide with the cost values in it and the formula if you want. But
And you might hear us talk about the ILA, that's just short for the interlocal agreement.
sorry,
No, just,
acronyms.
yeah.
So we talked about proposed staffing. This is also draft. This is basically, we've decided for the most part that we have to have an executive director by state statute. If we're providing superintendent services, we would need that as well. Where we need curriculum coordinator services as well, and we were hoping to find a superintendent that can wear 2 hats there, and also be strong in pedagogical curriculum coordination. Finance clerk, and that person would take care of payroll and accounts payable, accounts receivable. ESC administrative assistant would sort of be office manager for all these guys, including special ed and the superintendent. And we'd have a non-full-time, 60% we're proposing special ed director. So that could potentially be 3 days a week.
I'm probably not the only person who doesn't know this, but what's an executive director versus a superintendent?
So the executive director is required under the ESC statute to manage all of the finances and other people in that office essentially. And
So
be
they would
responsible
do all the-
essentially for that.
All the contract services,
Yep.
all the business services, transportation, all that kind of
And
stuff.
so for us, if you remember the services slide, we talked about transportation, nutrition, I'm missing a whole bunch. Facilities. So that executive director would sort of manage that aspect of those services, and be responsible for those things. And since we're proposing that we have the superintendent services as part of the ESC, we obviously need a superintendent. So,
Thank you.
Are they gonna be the same person?
That's what we're looking, that's what we are
The
suggesting.
executive director, the superintendent can't be the same person, kind of by statute.
Superintendent curriculum coordinator are what we're suggesting is the same.
Right, so one of the things we feel a lot of questions about and that we also feel strongly about is the hiring process. One of the first steps would be to come up with detailed job descriptions for each positions. And just like all of the hiring in the AOS and at the schools, the positions would be advertised in Lincoln County News on a web-based program that we use, servingschools.com, and in any other location that we deem necessary to ensure we attract the appropriate candidates. We've used the Portland Press Herald before. Sometimes there are other ways that we can attract, if we are looking for that superintendent curriculum coordinator, we can kind of tailor the publications that we use to find the right people for those jobs. An application interview process will be followed, similar to what we do and have been doing for a long time. And the interviewing committees will be made up of a mix of school board members, administrators, staff, and community members from each of the 2 towns. And that's very similar to the process that we went through to hire Todd and the process that we went through to hire Lori. I think when we hired Lori, we had a school board member, we had staff, we had Matt Poole was on there, and we had a selectman on there. So we try and really kind of come up with a really good representation of the town when we're looking to interview different candidates for these positions, and I'm sure Bristol does the same. Hold on, yes.
Well, if we could go back to the previous slide, that from your description, the executive director is essentially chief financial officer. So why can't he handle the finance coach?
He is,
So
or
why-
he or she does,
Why do they need the finance coach?
they need a finance admin to get more of the work done.
I'm a little naive on this whole thing, but how does the responsibility of the superintendent curriculum coordinator differ from that of the principals of the schools in terms of actual activity and authority?
Well, one of the things that I think is important about having both a superintendent and a principal and not combining those jobs is that they serve as a check and balance system for each other. So some schools do have principal superintendents that are combined into one. A lot of the island schools do, and some of the smaller schools. But I personally feel like it's important to have two people because they can keep each other honest. Honestly, we used to have a curriculum coordinator. Now that job has been put on the shoulders of the principals, and they have a lot to do already. So it's felt like a particularly weighty lift for the principals when we used to have a service, and they could help us with just different ideas. They could help join people in different schools, or you can probably.
And they brought a lot of the data from Maine and from the AOS and from our schools and compared how our kids are doing versus others. We can do it. We can absolutely do it, and we will, and we have been this year. But it does add an awful lot. So if we are in a position to be able to get that curriculum coordinator position back in our budgets, I think it is key for our students and our staff. Yes.
How about authority?
Actually,
What do you mean?
Who makes the decisions?
Oh, yes. That's helpful too. Because if I try to go rogue, I need a curriculum coordinator to tell me no.
actually, as these are two independent schools, they still have two principals.
Yeah.
And they still answer to the central authority. And that's why we have a superintendent. So in other words, if the two principals decide, they have different diverging opinions or something like that, it's still the superintendent's job to make sure that all this works together.
And we're correct.
And so, a question, so if the curriculum coordinator is part of the superintendent position, is it likely then that they'll develop the curriculum to go across both schools, be the same curriculum that they'll apply to both schools? Or will it be independent curriculum?
That's a fantastic question. The curriculum's really a board decision. They will bring forward to both boards what they suggest as the curriculum and work to help the staff understand, this is why it is in the best interest of your students. This is why it's best practices. This is data driven. So that's what their job is, to sell it to the boards.
But I love this question because I think that's also something that will help us by not being a part of a bigger AOS. We're unique here because we teach 2 grades in one classroom. So sometimes that means that the curriculum that works for Noblesboro or Bristol doesn't actually work for us because we've got 1st and 2nd graders or 3rd and 4th graders being taught at the same time by one teacher. So I think that the curriculum coordinator can make sure that we're setting the same goals and looking after the students in the best way we can, but it might be that we do have a different program than Bristol does, but the goal and the results are the same. So I think that it does allow us to have, we don't want you to be doing all sorts of different things, but it allows us to have a little bit more freedom than if we're in a 4-town AOS that maybe is more geared towards having one program for each of the schools.
So
I think
is today in the AOS, even before Dan Scott left, was there a single curriculum coordinator for the whole So this is not new, it's now even a smaller group that you have a single curriculum coordinator.
We're suggesting a part-time, yeah.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, so this is not new to having one curriculum coordinator for the whole AOS, whatever, however you're structured.
I think when GSV split off and we had a full-time superintendent and they had a 60% superintendent, that 60% superintendent was equivalent to the curriculum coordinator. I think being new to all of this, none of us realized how much that was going to be, how difficult that was going to be. And the fact that this is really what we need. We're here to teach children. So having the best resources and the most support for that is really important. So we've been missing it this year. We've been doing what we can to make it work, but it's really important to get it back into our programming.
I think this is proposed.
But that role figure is a little bit redundant though, right? Because your schools ultimately make your own decisions based on what curriculum you want to provide. So we could have somebody at the central office, maybe recommendations, but the schools themselves sort of say, oh, yeah, we like this idea, but we're going to do our own thing.
Well, it's their job to research what is best for that school. So for a school where you teach 2 grades, for instance, we have iReady Math because that is something you can teach in the same classroom for 2 different grades, whereas for K to 4, they have Bridges because that works for their type
And
of
the
school.
role is broader than just what programming.
Yes.
is. The role is about overseeing the instructional practices, the assessment practices, the expectations from state, local, state, and federal assessments. How to administer them, how to interpret them, how they impact your kids, how to help, speaking to Jeff Burrows coming earlier, how to coordinate with Lincoln Academy's curriculum people and ensure our programming is feeding or supporting our kids to be successful at the high school level. Those folks have information around what the current K to 12 is, current best practices for teaching and learning. So they really, it's a lot of supporting teachers in their growth and development as well as the other instructional support staff. So it's broader than just what program you teach in the classroom. It oversees those things. And AOS 93 has had somebody minimally 50% in that role for, I can't even imagine. Other than last year and this year, I would say at least 20 years. So it was a shift when that change happened to GSB leaving. So that's a lot of why we're feeling it too. It's a duplication of efforts in every school that then makes more work for central office with purchasing, supporting, all that work. So.
And they're also available to help parents too. I know as a parent of a math student, I went in to talk to Ann Hassett when she was in that role, and it was really helpful to me as well. Yeah.
Is there anything with the ESC rules that says you can't have an executive director who's also superintendent certified?
Yeah.
So the DOE frowns on it. I don't think there's anything in statute that says that, but the DOE has instructed us that it's not the best model, and you talk to them, I don't know if you can explain it better.
Well, an ESC does not have to have a superintendent. It's just that we are providing the services of superintendent to both schools to share the cost of a superintendent. By statute, districts have to have a superintendent. So if we didn't have a superintendent there, Bristol would have to hire one on their own, and so would South Bristol. By statute, you also, in an ESC, you have to have an executive director.
I'm sorry, didn't you just say there's nothing that says you have to have a superintendent?
In a district, we have to have a superintendent.
So individually, we are both districts. South Bristol is a district and Bristol is a district because we're on.
That won't change.
And yeah, that won't change. So every district needs a superintendent. However, an ESC is more of business services, and it could provide superintendent services too. And the suggestion of this committee is that we would like that ESC to provide.
Can you tell me why?
Why we would like the ESC to have a superintendent?
Well, no, Now you're confused.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
So otherwise, each school would have to have their own superintendent. And that school would have to hire a superintendent, just like they hire an English teacher or a math teacher.
You could have an executive director who has superintendent certification and could serve as the superintendent and the executive.
They recommend that the executive director be somebody different than the superintendent because it prevents a conflict of interest. The Department of Education.
They recommend that we have both
Yes.
those positions.
Yes. Because the executive director is focused on the business of the ESC and the superintendent is focused on
There are lots of superintendents who serve as business managers too.
The ESC has been a developing thing for the last few years. It got its start during COVID, so it was kind of slow to get out of the gate. And they've been seeing, how things are working in different towns as it's been going along. And so the guidance now is to have the two different.
Sarah, did you have something?
I was just going to mention that the executive director position is also subsidized by the state. I don't, if I have.
Yeah, so the state pays what, 55%
55%.
of their salary plus some benefits, not all benefits, but some benefits.
Sure. So one of the ways an ESC is different than, an RSU or some others, or having two separate school districts, is that we can share the positions, we can share the costs. The ESC can be a fiscal agent for both of the schools. So the ESC has a budget and can manage the services essentially that that the districts pay into the ESC to take advantage of. So the administration collaboration, potential future efficiencies. We talked about IT collaboration as well, which might, right now, both districts have an IT person. So we might be able to have some savings there. Sharing of facilities management and purchasing might also be one of the ways that the executive director chooses to manage the facilities portion of that. And administrative assistance, we actually might be able to streamline some of those services as well, because right now both schools have, I think 3 or 4, I forgot, administrative assistants.
We have one.
We have it, and they have two, right?
One and they have two, yeah, so 3 combined.
And transportation efficiencies, the executive director would also serve in the transportation management role and manage contracts for transportation between the two, for both, not between, but for both districts. And he or she can manage the efficiencies for both towns.
So with the administrative assistants, because I'm assuming that those are largely financial as well with the schools currently? Yes?
A little bit of the financial, yes, side of it, and also run the day-to-day running of the school. But what we had talked about is it could be possible to streamline some of their jobs so that they are each taking on a role that they could become experts in and that could support us to support the ESC. Did you want to add anything to that, Jen?
No, I was gonna, like you said, there's a variety of things that different administrative assistant positions do, from state reporting to finance to supporting special ed scheduling. There's a huge variety in our small schools, and it varies school to school how we utilize our folks, like how many hats they wear. So one of the opportunities, as Lori was saying, is somebody might be more the state reporting expert, more in the ins and outs of synergy and whatever that is. Somebody else might be more focused on the other. And even though it's still double, because you have 2 districts that operate under the ESC, if you're good at one skill set and doing it twice, you don't have to have all these people learning the breadth of those jobs. So there's an efficiency with combining, the tasks.
So do you anticipate that you'll have fewer assistants, so that you'll only have one, since you will have now an assistant under the ESC who is taking care of all of your finances?
I think the goal of this work is to build something that makes sense, and then hopefully year 2 or 3, be able to streamline as, if the transition won't be efficient, because you have to change. Change never is super efficient. But, the goal would be to see where those other future, things like that, potential for future efficiencies are, things like that. Once we're up and running, we see what things really are easier to do that way. For sure, but initially it's hard to know because we're still trying to build it and make it work for both towns.
Okay, so our South Bristol's portion assessment for the AOS has gone up significantly. And under the new cost sharing agreement, it's been stated, the idea is that we're going to be getting to a 25% equal split of the cost of the AOS. Again, South Bristol in particular has very little say in that. So while, like for instance, Bristol's numbers went down last year and would probably go down again this year, our numbers have jumped up considerably, which you'll see in the next slide, which you don't need to go to yet. And also under the ESC will get a contribution of approximately $100,000 from the state because it pays for a proportion of the executive director's salary and benefits, and it also gives a subsidy per student. So that money would be coming in and we would not have that otherwise. All right, now the next slide.
And just so you guys know, we're up, right now, South Bristol is around 18%, so that's looking up to from 18 to 25 potentially in the future.
Question? The first bullet under the previous slide talks about the 25% split. That's not where we're at now, I take it.
It's not.
And is that just a wish list? Is that an attempt to make South Bristol and Bristol stay or more palatable? Is that the idea of that?
No, it's, I think it's, for several years, South Bristol has been paying a disproportionately small share of the AOS's costs. I mean, frankly, we were paying whatever 6% or 7% or something like that. And now that it's down to 4 towns and, Damascus, Newcastle, and Bremen have left, the 2 towns, Jefferson and Noblesboro, would like to see our portion go up. And so they said, instead of making us pay 25% right up front in the first year, which was on the table for a minute, they said we can do this gradually. And so last year it went up to 18%. This year it was supposed to go up to 22%. I was just at the AOS budget meeting last night. We decided not to talk about that until we know what's going on here.
Okay, so the 25% is more than we're paying now.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Yes,
less.
we haven't gotten to that yet. 25% would put our contribution somewhere around $310,000, $315,000.
Okay.
So next slide. You can kind of see that a little bit here. The top portion of numbers is South Bristol's contributions. We're at 210 this year. Oh, can you go back?
Sorry.
So we're at 210 in this current year, which is a big jump, $135,000 jump over the previous year. And if we moved up to the next step, which would be like a 22% contribution, which we can just guess, right, is kind of halfway between 18 and 25%, then we'd be looking at 273 this year. So that's a lot. And you can see, frankly, you look down below, Bristol's numbers are going down, and they would go down, another 10 grand or so in subsequent years if we all got up to about a 25% equal share. But Bristol's numbers will still come out lower if we do the ESC model and the South Bristol school budget will actually, the Bristol school budget will actually come down. Go to the next slide. Okay, so here you have the different cost centers broken out for the superintendent and all those staff positions and the startup costs. So we get down to brass tacks of, 620, is that what I see?
Again, I'm sorry.
Very anxious.
He's not
Of
touching it.
around 620. So then you take that number and you divide by the cost sharing arrangement that we talked about. You take 50% of that number, right? So 310,000 or something like that. You divide that in half. It's 150 for each school, and then you take the other half, another 310,000. You divide that by the proportion of students that are in the school. So it, for numbers, it works out to about 25%. I think we have 60 and Bristol has, Jen, 180.
Sorry, this is a little hard to read, but it's in the handout if you want to see it there better. As Christian pointed out, there's two parts to the cost sharing proposal. Part A is takes the budget and divides it by two, and divides it by two again, essentially, and we split that equally. And then part B is the remainder sort of weighted by student population. And then you get the portion at the bottom, South Bristol Part A plus Part B. And that number down here is what we're suggesting might be the first year's South Bristol assessment to the ESC.
And the year 2 assessment isn't quite accurate because there's no increase for salaries or health insurance, and those things always happen. So I think we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, so it's a draft budget, and the two school boards still need to have a conversation about the interlocal agreement, but the next step for us is to submit the step 2 or the part 2 application to the DOE, which requires a proposed budget, a proposed interlocal agreement, and a proposed withdrawal plan. And we have to do that fairly soon, and then we can keep going. And then the AOS will know whether we're in or out. The AOS can do their budget, and they can get their budgets into their town meetings and into their town budgets, and we can get ours into ours. Yes?
So what's your total projected budget for the school for next year?
The total projected.
Not the cost sharing part, the total projected budget
For the school?
for the school.
We haven't even started talking about next year's budget for the school yet, on the school.
Is that something you should consider?
We usually start around October, working on our budget, and then we have a budget
To make
committee.
an informed choice, shouldn't you project total cost of this plan versus what we have now, versus what it would be for a private school?
Right, well,
Compare all your options.
well, this was comparing the AOS options with the ESC options. So the town budget is separate from our kind of superintendent administrative budget, from the central office budget.
It's not separate. It's all one thing.
When we vote, they vote in December on the AOS budget, which they're working on now. We start our town budget in October. We use the numbers that get approved in December from the AOS vote in our town
It
budget.
doesn't matter what we vote, you get what you asked for.
I mean, I'm actually thrilled to see so many people here tonight asking questions, because generally speaking, we don't see this. And I would like to invite everybody to come to the meetings where we're developing our budget, because by the time we get up in front of you on May 13th or the second Tuesday in March, it's really hard to adjust and to ask questions, because those things need to come up as we're developing the budget, and we welcome those questions. Unfortunately, by town meeting, it's not too late because it's a democratic process, but it's really hard if you haven't been involved in the meetings up to then to talk about issues. So we invite you to come to the process as we're developing the budget, and we have a joint budget meeting in January.
But if I could just add, the restructuring committee already recognized the fact that the idea of creating two separate private schools, or even just two standalone school systems, would be more expensive than the RSU or than.
So you would have numbers written down.
Somewhere back in the notes, we abandoned that thought months and months and months ago. The RSU was abandoned because it was untenable because of the school board nature that an RSU demands according to statute, which would mean that you would have one school board voted on by the two towns together. So you'd have 5 school board members that would be voted on by both communities, and that seemed untenable. And also the school buildings would then become the property of the RSU rather than of the towns, and that seemed like an untenable position.
I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind. It also means staff could be moved from one building to another. I have a mentor principal in Wyndham, and she's actually in the Raymond School, and every year she loses a staff member because another school needs that staff member. Her classes get a little bit smaller, and it's a tough thing, I think, for people, especially in a small rural community, to be plucked from their position just because somebody needs you next door. Sorry.
And we did meet with our, one of our town residents who is the superintendent principal at West Bath. She's also like the nutrition coordinator. She's the transportation person. She wears all these hats. And when she retires, they're going to have to hire a lot of people to fill those positions because it's not something that you can expect one person to do. So we did look into, there are certain schools around that we looked into. That's why when we talked to our principal superintendent, we decided that didn't provide the checks and balances that we thought were important to us. So we've looked at different models around this area and farther afield.
Timing question. When you say that the ESC might operate in parallel to the AOS in the fourth quarter of 26, I assume that means double cost. I assume we don't get any money back from the AOS for FY26 after we withdraw.
No, I don't think we'll get any money back from the AOS. Although there might be a.
So we're stuck with the AOS cost for the full year, and then you're saying, well, the ESC might operate for a quarter in parallel or in duplication, really.
Yeah, it might.
So there'd be
It might have to, because everything has to be set up. So that probably would be an additional cost.
I have a question it's sort of outside of the context of what you're talking right now, but I'm wondering if somebody can speak about, because I'm trying to find some of the information and I'm not having great luck. And I know some of this is dictated by the state and DOE, so it might be out of your purview, forgive me, but how are the policies evolving for what used to be intra-superintendent agreements? Now they're inter. How are those policies evolving, and can you speak to that a little bit?
I think our superintendent might do it.
Talking superintendent agreements?
Yeah, which would be, previously intra to AOS 93, but now would be inter-district, right? How is that written into this process on your end?
I don't think it changes anything.
It doesn't change.
Unless, in the state of Maine, if you want to apply to go to a different school, you do that through your superintendent's office. So if someone from GSB, they would go to Lindsay's office and ask for that application. And then the two superintendents would discuss it, they'd discuss it with their principals, and that's it. As long as the town that you are in has the grade that your child is going to be in, there's no tuition discussion, none of that. No finances change hands at all. Is that?
So you get, the receiving school will get the student count.
Yeah.
So there's no change from what it is now because we're actually all separate districts legally by the DOE.
Okay, so there's no
well,
change.
even though
Somewhat right.
Yeah.
Right now, it's one superintendent would approve any one of the 4 towns. So I'd actually be the sending superintendent as well as the receiving superintendent for the 4 towns that are currently in the AOS.
Okay, and how is that how will that then change?
If these 2 towns create an ESC, then their superintendent, if someone wanted to go up to Noblesboro, let's say, they would begin in this district, their superintendent would have to approve it, then it would come to me for approval as, like we said, I then reach out, because we got to take into things like class sizes, we got to take that into account, we got to take into what the needs of the student are, can we provide them? Superintendents are really supposed to be based on what is in the best interest of the student. Sometimes staying in the district they're in is in the best interest of the student, so those can be declined. A parent has the opportunity to appeal to the commissioner if one is declined, and it's not uncommon. Commissioners will sometimes override that. But that's the process.
Okay. And if I could take just a little bit more of your time, how does the actual, what is the financial transaction from town to town as far as taxes paid? I mean, does
With the
that actually
superintendent's
change hands in these agreements? Because I've been trying to get a clear
In the
understanding.
superintendent's agreement, there is. You assume, like I said, you'll get the student count, so the receiving school would get an extra student, which would kick into the 8279, which may have a minimal impact on state funding to the district.
Okay.
I get this question a lot from a lot of my boards, because they want to know, is it costing us more to have the student come from another town?
Correct.
You wouldn't bring the student in if it was going to cost you to have, increased staffing or something like that. So it's usually not an impact financially to the receiving district.
Okay.
Because you wouldn't bring a student in if you needed to add a teacher, for example. There are arrangements that we have where some of our schools do pay tuition into our other schools. So you can send a student down on a tuition basis. That's not a superintendent's agreement. That's not something that a parent has requested and that you made a transition. That's where one of these schools has a service that can provide that perhaps another school can't. We've done it in this district. So we've had students tuition in from one of our other towns to a school. And then there would be some revenue exchange. That's different than superintendent's.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for answering that.
Sure.
So that's what a superintendent does.
One of the main things,
One of the things.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say that this meeting has been very helpful, and I appreciate all the hard work that you've done, and I think it's a good idea to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. Very good.
We appreciate that. We also know that there's a lot more hard work to really iron some of this stuff out. And so this is all draft, like we've said, but we're meeting again shortly and we're going to keep doing the work that we need to do to get it.
I'm truly glad that I was off the school.
We don't have as many good jokes now, Bob.
Thank you all for coming. It really is important to be able to get the word out and to get the questions. We want the questions because we want to be able to answer them.
Just one last thing, so I understand the concept of the efficiencies, but really not so much efficiencies, but gaining control back of the AOS, sort of bringing the creation of the ESC. But from an individual school perspective, there's still separate schools, separate school boards, separate budgets. And it really, schools not going to change. Both towns may have a little frustration with that because budgets are out of control and, everybody wants the budget to decrease. So there really is no, from an actual operations of the school, there's no short or long-term goals right now for actual efficiencies within our individual schools.
Within our individual schools, not so much, but Jen and I have been starting to work together, and positions that we both might have a part-time person, if we can make that one person, that's one health insurance as opposed to two, or one health insurance. It's one thing. But also as people leave, we might decide that there's another area where we could combine a position.
I think with the ESC board being the 10 people, 5 and 5, the boards get to have that conversation more frequently around even speaking to those school efficiencies. I think ideas come up differently when you have that group of people together with facing the challenges that you're talking about.
But the schools are really not connected in an operational standpoint. So to have one staff member sharing duties really isn't practical unless they're leaving the school and going to the other
We
school.
currently have like 3 people that basically are shared between special education and music and other things because we each have part-time jobs and they wanted more full-time work. And it's good timing. So like Lori said, when that can happen, that's positive because it's a win for everybody. People don't always want to drive down. There isn't a lot of housing. They don't want to drive down Peninsula for a 40% job if they can have us in a full-time job and the are close.
It's a school, and in business, efficiencies are all about costs. So you cut your costs. But if you look at the budget of the school and you want a meaningful, efficient act, and you say, 10%, that's colossal. I mean, it affects the absolute working of the school. So I think efficiency is not a word that we should be using. I think what we should really think about are every decision we make, what effect will it have 5, 7, 10 years down the road? And how do we make this a better, more interesting, vibrant school where everybody gets a good education, has a good time, is prepared to move forward in life, and can go off to Lincoln Academy or anywhere else, armed and ready to do well?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Being the new guy in the budget committee, when I hear when people in town see me, they're not happy. And so, I mean, and they're looking
For the rest of your
what
life.
are you gonna do about it?
For the rest of your life.
They're looking for a different answer than that, just being honest. And
Me
different
too, I
results.
hear it all the
So
time too.
Matt, part of when we get to the town budgeting process, like that's when we look at our school and figure out, okay, can the custodian also do this, like the water testing, like we don't pay a separate person to do the water testing anymore. So that's when we will really look at just this building more than the ESC part. So that's a task that we do have to look at. And we have been listening to the townspeople because, I mean, it's my 10th year. The budget has gone up crazily under my watch. So like, I have to say that I hate that, but like, yeah, but it's true. And we'll all be up there in March trying to figure this out together also.
Did the budget committee position come with the house?
Yeah.
Yeah, really. No, we still got Chuck's on board too, so we have both of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right.
I just have one quick question. What was the source of the numbers for the salaries of superintendent and education director? Was that source from the state? Where was that number generated from?
Superintendent curriculum coordinator? Is that what it
Office of Superintendent, 188,670, and executive director, 182,962. So what was the source for those numbers? I don't know what the going rate for a superintendent is, so where did that number come from?
On budget committee. Yeah.
So, when we did and it's still in draft, when we are working with the budget, we took numbers from a number of different places. We hired a consultant to help us figure out what those costs might be in different scenarios. And we have spreadsheets with multiple columns in it. We have some numbers from our current central office. We have some numbers from Great Salt Bay, since they just went through the same process. We sort of combined those numbers, figured out where we thought they were high, where we thought they were low, and in terms of the Office of Superintendent, for example, that's not a salary number, that's a category of expenses.
The office, not just the salary of the individual.
Correct,
office.
benefits and office and supplies and whatever that person needs.
Travel, PD.
So, same with the ESC Administrative Assistant and Executive Director. We tried to lump those costs together so that we would know what that individual or that job description essentially would cost in the ESC. The other, same with special services, financial services or office expenses, ESC office expenses, and all of the myriad of things that happen to be lumped into that, including postage and supplies and all that sort of thing. So those are the sort of categories of numbers that we came up with that an ESC would need to get off the ground. As you can see in that slide, there's a revenue number as well. That's what we expect that we can get from the Department of Ed from year 1 and year 2 in terms of either reimbursement for the executive director's salary and benefits, as well as some costs of our financials, hopefully our financial system, to get us off the ground with that, and the tuition costs increases as well because we would be in an ESC. I know we kind of glossed over that statement, but the DOE is so much encouraging ESCs over the AOS that they've decided that they would actually give us more tuition for every kid if we join an ESC. So just one of the incentives.
High school, right?
I don't know, what's that?
It's up through high school, so it's our,
Yes,
we get,
it's
for every
K-12.
K-12 student, we get a certain amount of money, as does Bristol.
Right. I don't know if that answered your
Yeah,
question.
no, it does, more than answers it. I just was, Todd, how does that number look to you?
I-
You would be the expert.
If you asked about the AOS budget, I could answer that question. I'm not really sure. I think that was the best answer.
Yeah.
If you ask me just ballpark, look at those numbers, do I think they're fairly accurate? I would say yes.
You wish it was.
No, I would say they're fairly accurate.
I mean, we're hoping they're high and we can hire someone, and cut down those costs, but we don't want to bring low numbers to the public and then have to ask for more money, because, we'd all be run out of town.
Especially with the health insurance, I mean, those can vary a lot depending on the need.
We actually, and you helped just outline why we might have to increase that just because we want to cover it.
And when you do positions like that, they had to, again, I'm assuming they did this, you have to budget for, somewhere where you're gonna get an individual, but you also have to budget for family insurance plans. And family, because you don't want to budget for an individual and have someone come in and request it.
You've got to factor it all, you've got to factor the cost of housing on Peninsula or works,
Right, so we're hoping the budget's high, honestly, but we're also don't want to come back to the public and say we didn't want to.
Fair enough.
You ready?
All right, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that the South Bristol School Board moves to continue our support of ESC endeavor and submit part 2 of the application process.
Second. Any other discussion? So moved?
Second that.
Oh, you, Sandy, you good? Huh? You good? Yeah. Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
All right, and keep checking the South Bristol School website, there'll be emails from the town potentially going out to, keep you abreast of what we're doing, so, keep asking questions.
Could you give a plug for the community cleanup on the?
You can.
And I didn't go to the booster
You can,
meeting.
go ahead, Neil, the floor is yours.
The boosters, SPS boosters are gonna have a community cleanup here at the school on Sunday, the 19th, from 10 to 12. Anyone that can come and help out?
Thank you.
Anyone is welcome.
Sunday, the 19th.
Even Bristol people.
Yeah.
Bring your
In the
rakes,
spring,
bring your
collaboration, we would really love to have you come rake leaves.
Come rake leaves.
Thank you all, everybody.
Thank you.